addictive foods and emotional eating. And I know that I mean, I'll just say this. I know that everybody who's watching this call right now and everybody who's on at some point has had a run-in with addictive foods. And I'm going to tell you why, because everybody is susceptible to addictive foods. So the first thing that I want to just like take a deep breath and just say to yourself, this is not my fault. There is nothing personally wrong with me. This is how the human body is designed. Okay. So that's the first thing that I really want everybody to just sort of breathe into, that because there's truly nobody out there in the entire world that doesn't have at least one temptation or one addiction or something that they could say, oh my gosh, Carmelos or Kit Kats is my thing, right? Because that's my thing, so I can just own that. So what I want you to know is that addictive foods are absolutely everywhere and they are abundant. So we can't even get through a checkout counter. We can't go to a convenience store. We can't drive down the road without seeing fast food. They are literally everywhere. And the food industry completely knows that you have an addictive personality to foods, right? If there wasn't, then the food industry wouldn't be such a prosperous place to be, right? So they know that we have certain tendencies in our brain and our neuroperceptors, and they completely design foods around the concept that we are addicted to them. That when we eat them, we crave more of them, and the more that we crave them, the more that we eat them, right? And so being able to break that cycle is where programs like Optavia and us as coaches are able to come into your lives and help break the cycle. But one thing that you should be completely aware of is that not only does the food and drug industry completely know that you have addictive personalities and are addicted to certain neuroperceptors and how that they can release dopamine in the brain, but then they advertise to it. So if you even just think about the Super Bowl and the Doritos commercials, all the food commercials, that if you go back and think about it, every food commercial that you saw on Super Bowl were all foods that had sort of addictive type qualities. Doritos, like fast foods, things like that, because they know that once your mind has had dopamine released as a result of an addictive food, that all it takes is advertising to tap back into that. And the next thing you know, it's 12 o'clock at midnight, you see a Ben & Jerry's ice cream commercial, it's snowing outside, and yet you find yourself risking your life driving down the store to get a gallon of ice cream, right? Because they know that they can tap into those neuroperceptors. So knowing all of that, know that there's a statistic. The average American consumes more than 150 pounds of sugar annually. That number is staggering. And quite frankly, our human body is completely not designed to process that amount of sugar. There's not enough insulin in our body. The insulin pump can't stay turned on long enough to process that kind of sugar through our body. So knowing that that's the case, and I know it is crazy, eliminating the sugars and the starches from our body is the key factor. We've got to break up with the foods that we are completely addicted to, and we have to first become aware of it. So I'll just tell you, I'm a little bit of a geek to the human hormone system. I love to study things like leptin and cortisol and insulin and ghrelin and things like that, because they all sort of intersect in our body at different times. So I'm going to tell you a little secret. Leptin is naturally produced in the body, and it's a hormone that's released from fat cells that allows us to feel full. So if we go back to the caveman days and we think about how often we hunted and gathered, like women went out and gathered fruits and vegetables, right? And then men went out and hunted and brought us back lean proteins. That was the food source. We didn't have Doritos and popcorn and donuts and Wendy's French fries. Those were not things that were available to us. So the body didn't crave it. So when they went out and hunted and gathered, leptin was automatically elevated in their body and they felt full. Therefore, obesity didn't really exist back in the Paleolithic age, in the caveman days. But what I will tell you is that when you eat something that has high in sugar, your insulin pump turns on to process it. And the next thing you know, insulin is blocking leptin. So leptin isn't there to available in your system to make you feel full. Therefore, you're in this nasty cycle of craving those addictive foods, whatever it is that you are naturally, your DNA is naturally designed to be addicted to. So when we eat lean and greens, the insulin turns off and it stays off, right? And we lip into a fat burning mode, and leptin is there to help support us and help us feel satiated. But when we're eating processed foods, the insulin goes up and up and up, and the pump stays on and leptin gets blocked. And the next thing you know, we're storing fat instead of using it as energy. So when you eat a ton of addicted foods, we're actually just creating a bigger cycle. So breaking up, like becoming aware of what is addictive for you, and then learning how to create a process or break a habit cycle, which is something I encourage you to talk to with your coach, because you and your coach can figure out a way to sort of break that cycle, right? If you can break the cycle, you can create a new habit loop. If you can create a new habit loop, you can beat this, right? So I want to share with you an interesting study. It's a mice study. And they fed this batch of mice high glycemic foods for a period of time. They stopped running on the treadmill, their little micey mill, and they wound up sleeping a ton. How many of us have ever felt like that after they've ate a bunch of sugar or starchy carbs? It's the same thing. As soon as they stopped feeding them glycemic foods, their energy popped up, they lost weight, and the same thing is true with the human body. Another really incredible, and this is something that really hit home for me, is that there was a study of humans, and they were put into an MRI machine, and the first individual was high on cocaine, and the second one was heroin, and the third one was sugar, and the fourth one was starchy carbs. The same neuroperceptor section of the brain lit up like a green Christmas tree. The exact same place. And what they were seeing in those lobes of the brain was dopamine being released. So when dopamine is released into the brain, it's telling you that makes me feel good, right? Or you get a sensation that you become addicted to. So that's why we become addicted. So but think about this for a second. Cocaine and heroin addicts, they are allowed to get checked into a place where they can break up with their habit. Like they're literally taken somewhere and given tools and resources to get clean, right? Because it's dangerous, it will kill you. Well, it's really not any different for sugar and starch, except we just don't check ourselves into clinics, right? Because in theory, sugar is not going to kill us, it's just going to make us feel like crap. So in a sense, you have to like create a lepogenic environment that allows you a space to break up with that. You have to create your own clinic, your own center with the help of your coach and loved ones to help you with this process. Now, for somebody, it could be super severe, and for somebody else, it could just be a mild addiction. And I actually created and it's in your life book. You can turn to a certain page. I'll tell you about it at the end, but there is a susceptibility quiz that can help you sort of monitor, scale of 1 to 10. How bad do you have an addictive personality to certain foods? So that's something that we can talk about. Don't forget, alcohol is sugar, right? So despite the fact that alcohol may not be as perceived as maybe dangerous as cocaine and heroin, it absolutely is, because it is why alcoholics crave it, because it's creating that same dopamine release in the brain. It makes them feel good. It releases them from a current reality. And so alcohol is sugar, sugar is sugar, starches are sugar, right? And that's what we crave. So breaking the cycle is very difficult. And I'm going to just pop over really quick. I want to ask one of my coaches and dear friend to pop off and chat for just a couple of minutes. A couple of weeks ago, I did kind of a 5-day challenge on improving your habits of health, and this addictive food topic was one of them. And all of a sudden, Robin disappeared out of the group. And so I connected with her and asked what was up. And I'm going to let her share with you her experience through that process.
Hello, everyone. My name's Robin. I have had a lot of success with Optavia. I've lost 55 pounds. I am hypothyroid and gluten intolerant. So I was very excited. And I have, my personality is, sometimes I remind myself of Eeyore sometimes, where I am just, sometimes it's better not to try at all than to fail. So I was doing this March into Healthier Habits challenge that Leah started, and I came in pretty confident because I've done really, really well, and on day 3 or 4, we had this addictive food challenge, and I took the challenge and I scored the worst. I mean, every single question I had the most addictive answer, and I was shocked. So shocked that I couldn't even deal with it. Like I didn't want to talk about it. I couldn't even think about it. I just like turned tail and took off. But after about 24 hours, I was willing to think about it a little bit. And I have had this issue, yes, I lost 55 pounds, but I keep slipping back into old habits. So I'll gain back, 15 pounds pretty slowly. And then I see what's happening and I go back on the 4 and 2 or the 5 and 1 and I lose it. And the way that it starts for me is at night, I feel like I can't relax at the end of my day. And so I will have a glass of wine. And then I will have another glass of wine, and then I want to eat some popcorn. And so I had this idea. I knew that was a problem, and so I made this space upstairs, this other space where I could relax. I bought a massage chair. I put a lamp in there that I really liked. My life book is up there, and at night, I am not going to drink wine and watch Dateline. I'm going to go upstairs and sit in my massage chair and, journal in my life book. And I didn't do it. I couldn't do it. There was like this barrier and then I thought, my God, am I an alcoholic? Well, so I completely stopped drinking. Again, I did when I was on the 5 and 1, but again, I completely stopped with the wine. And still I couldn't go upstairs. So then I started, I started realizing that I wasn't an alcoholic. It wasn't the wine that I was addicted to. It was the sugar. It was the sugar and the popcorn. And so I gave that up. And still, even though I know it's still such a struggle. I mean, my husband, I eat really healthy. My nutrition is on par. My husband the other night, we're stuck at home. We're running out of produce. He's like, well, let's just fix some potatoes to go with dinner, right? So I'm like, sure, yeah, I'll roast some potatoes in the oven. You guys, I ate so many potatoes. I was crazy. Like, it's everywhere, it's such a powerful thing to realize that this is what I've been struggling with all this time. This is the answer. And I had no idea what was happening. I was so frustrated because I couldn't figure out why I couldn't go into maintenance and stay where I wanted to be. And it is sneaky, friends. This is a sneaky thing. Like, it can be wine, it can be popcorn, it can be potatoes. For me, I'm gluten intolerant, so I can't eat baked food. I can't go buy candy at the store, you know? Um, but I have to be aware, I realize now. And, you know, I always thought, I don't need to measure my portions. I can't I can't overeat because I just eat vegetables, and I can't eat bread, I can't eat, you know, baked foods, that kind of thing. Well, you know, if I'm going to have some potatoes, I need I need to measure them out ahead of time. But I think that, you know, everyone, it's very powerful for me to realize that this is not something that's personally wrong with me. Um, and I feel a lot of hope going forward from this point. Like maybe I will be able to finish this out and live a normal life where I can just eat a normal dinner and a normal healthy dinner and know what I'm supposed to do and be in control. Um, because knowing what the issue is such a huge part of the battle, and I had no idea. I really had no idea.
Oh, Robin, thank you so much for sharing. I personally know what a breakthrough that is for you just to share those words out loud with someone other than me. And so I so appreciate you. But your comment about you have hope, that this is, I want to remind you guys, this is all part of our journey, right? The 5-in-1 and the losing the weight, that's just sort of, you know, knocking the tip off the iceberg. We have to get below the surface to really slay this dragon. And slaying addictive foods and putting and getting a grasp on the sugars and the kind of sugars, and it's an awareness within ourself, a self-awareness that allows us to really find hope and be able to create a plan, a personal plan around what's holding us back. And in Robin's case, sugar was holding her back. And so I have hope too, as a coach now, that I'm able to help Robin break through. And that, I mean, you guys, she looks amazing. I see her almost every other day. She looks amazing. She's beautiful. She's physically a stellar and svelte human being. But to be able to transform in here, the demons that have been hovering on her with regards to sugar, be able to identify them and now have a plan. That's really how we can help people, and it's amazing. Okay, so now I'm going to transition over to my dear friend Annette. She's also a coach, but the most beautiful thing about Annette is she's also a therapist. And so I really wanted, and she's also a self-proclaimed sugar addict, so she's going to talk to you about her own personal experience. But then also she's going to bring you some tools from a therapist standpoint that that she's going to have a unique perspective. So Annette, thank you so much for being here today.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so this is kind of the textbook stuff. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. If anybody needs anything, don't hesitate to reach out because I can certainly share. And I will also post a couple of things in the group afterwards about what I'm talking about. But I'm giving you guys some textbook tools on just dealing with addiction from a therapist standpoint. So first of all, and I've got notes. So I do want to let you know that healing from addiction focuses on the concept that the person is suffering and needs opposite forces to heal. And it doesn't mean that it's a lack of motivation and willpower, which they're great things to have, but we need to build skills that break the flow of our negative thoughts and our negative patterns to be able to be successful when motivation and willpower are not enough. So there's no part of this that stems from a place of anybody is bad or you can't do it or you're just the weak one. That's not what it is. The body is designed to want these things. The hormone stuff in the brain is this crazy, beautiful thing. And what we have to do is figure out where those needs are not being met and how we're trying to use food to cover needs that are not being met. The very first thing to this is acceptance. And Robin was so brave and honest with her place of saying, I accept I'm a sugar addict. I myself, I have to accept I'm a sugar addict. And my habits are very, very similar to Robin's. It's it's and it's a black and white thinking, and it's challenging because when we're talking about our weight and we talk about willpower and motivation, we get caught up in black and white thinking. And this is never black and white thinking. This is always places of gray. And to be able to accept ourselves for being in that gray zone versus always being good or bad. So what we want to do is find ways to enhance our capabilities, improve our motivation, decrease maladaptive behaviors, which is having the second glass of wine, going for the bag of chips, eating all the potatoes in the world, that kind of thing. And we need to restructure our environment. So we have a lot of tools through Optavia that go directly with therapeutic techniques with following these this mindset shift. So when we're talking about a mindset shift, there's 4 areas that I want people to be aware of when you are recognizing that you need to make change from an internal structure. We want to be aware of mindfulness instead of mindlessness, distress tolerance, which is accepting situations and not relying on our substance of choice to deal with that or to escape. We want to deal with interpersonal effectiveness, which is relationships, either relationships with people or relationships with ourselves, and how we use those maladaptive skills or maladaptive coping mechanisms. And then emotional regulation, which is identifying and changing our feelings about events. One of the beautiful things about Optavia is environment and peer support, right? I mean, we have our coaches, we have our community, we have the life book, we have an entire community of people that are saying, I'm with you in this, let's talk about it. And then we also need to recognize that environment also has to do with our own kitchens and our own spaces of what we keep around us. So not only is it the environment of community, but it's the environment of our physical location. We want to remove the triggers. So if that means getting rid of the bag of potato chips, get rid of the bag of potato chips. If you can. I know social isolation is hard when you've got kids and you're trying to like make them happy, put them farther away. So if you possibly can. And we want to build different coping mechanisms. Let's see here. We want to be active in working toward change. So a couple of steps that we can take that are simple ones, and we can go into bigger ones for dealing with addiction. But STOP is an acronym, and it's stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. And when you are dealing with, most of the time when we're dealing with food addictions, we're also dealing on an emotional level. And so what I want people to do is when you recognize that you're reaching for the bag of M&Ms, stop, breathe in, and observe what emotion you're feeling. And then we need to make a choice. Is this going to serve me in the long term, or is this serving in the short term? And there are times, my friends, that we need to serve in the short term. There are times that that is okay. But if you're doing that on a consistent basis, you're not serving yourself in the long term. And that's where we have to really, really observe why we're putting the M&Ms in our mouth. Is it going to really, really heal me in the moment? Or is this something that I'm falling back on a pattern that's not serving me and I need to make my healthier choices? And again, there's no black and white, there's no good or bad. There is simply being in the moment and being mindful to why you're choosing that substance at that moment. Then it's about kind of imagining, if you can, being in a helicopter. When we're stuck in these emotional places, and so often people eat emotionally, and right now I know a lot of people are eating out of fear and stress, there's boredom, there's so much tied with our substance of food, our addiction of choice, that that is tied to the emotion. What I would like everybody to do, if you can, when we're stuck in that emotion, we're very in it. We're in this like little central location and everything is swirling. I want you to imagine yourself in a helicopter lifting off from the ground. You're lifting away from all of the chaos, whatever the emotion is that is on the ground. And you get to rise above that emotion. You get to look at it from a bigger picture, and you get to say, I get to choose how I'm going to deal with this right now. And again, if you need to land and eat your M&Ms and that's what's going to serve you in the moment, obviously you can tell mine is M&Ms, sorry. But if that's what's going to serve you in the moment, accept yourself, be okay with who you are, do it non-judgmentally, and recognize you have the ability to make a change somewhere else. So I just want to encourage everybody. I've got a whole bunch of tips on being with yourself non-judgmentally, practicing mindfulness, recognizing emotional triggers, all that kind of stuff. But we also, this is a short little Zoom. So if anybody needs anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. But hopefully those will give you a couple of tips just from a therapeutic standpoint. Okay, I'm gonna toss it back to Leah. Have fun, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Oh, Annette, you are so amazing. I just want to, I know everybody on this Zoom is talking about just how wonderful it is to have your perspective. It's so valuable, and thank you for sharing even in the short spurts. I am going to, though, give you guys just some last tools because you have it actually in your hot little hands, and it's called This Life Book. And I'm going to tell you 2 places that you can go today, actually 3 places that you can go today to actually take really good care of yourself. And Annette sort of laid the groundwork beautifully. If you look at element 7, that is called creating a lepogenic world. Okay. I didn't even know what a lepogenic world was until I read this chapter. And I'm telling you, it actually gives you some release and the ability to just let go of the fact that this is not something that's happening to you. This is something that you can control. And so creating a lepogenic world is all about removing these things, these triggers from your environment, and creating a world that you can be successful in, not unsuccessful, right? So you have your fuelings, you have a system, you have a coach, but your responsibility of creating your healthy environment is on you, right? That's what you can do to control. And then the second place is jumping to element 16, and that's dealing with addictive foods. And on page 322, you're going to find a food addiction susceptibility quiz. And this is the quiz that Robin chatted about a little bit earlier, where that was where she had that kind of earth-shattering moment where she felt like, oh, I had no idea that what was holding her back from true freedom and health was that she had a sugar addiction. And so take the opportunity to go and just do a self-check and then check in with your coach and talk about it. Like, don't be afraid to just really dive in and to lean into it, because again, the honest to God truth is it is not your fault. This is nothing that you've done. This is the world that we were given and that we were raised in. We were raised in a world of addictive foods. What we have to do is learn how to live in it without being a victim to it. And one last tool that I'll give you guys, and then we're coming up on the half hour, and I want to open it up for questions and Q&A a little bit while we have Annette on the phone. She's a wonderful resource. But, and you probably already know this, but when you walk into the grocery store, actually I'm going to give you 2 tips. When you walk into the grocery store, stay out of the middle. Everything that you possibly need to live a healthy lifestyle is on the outer perimeter of the grocery store. I totally challenge you to try that. You can do all of the shopping that you possibly need. And if your kids need chips, tell them to go to the grocery store and buy their own chips. Give them a $20 bill. You don't need to live there because it's not a healthy place for you. So walk along the outside of the grocery store, get everything that you possibly need on the outer aisle. And if you still do not feel like you have the tools to make it through the checkout stand without the impulsive buy of the Cremello or Kit Kat, that's mine, then I encourage you today, like Safeway, Fred Meyer, all of the major grocery stores, you can actually shop online. And that's what I did and what I still do to this day. I shop online. I build all of my menus from recipes that I want to make throughout the week. I create 7 recipes. I build my shopping list. I go online and I drive in there and I pick it up and I pay for it online. All your impulse buying is to all that sort of desire to make those impulse buys, they're taken away from you because you have control when you're sitting at the computer. So I want to thank you guys very much for being on this morning, for being so attentive, for listening to such an important topic. And I just want to open it up to anybody who might be interested in some questions for Annette or myself. I don't think that Robin is still on. She had to run off to work, but any questions? Was this helpful? How about that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was taking notes, and some of it could be because I'm also trying to get information out to students at the same time. So, okay, wrong. Okay, so the Annette talked about the 4, and I don't remember what they were called. Mindfulness versus something, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and emotional regulation. Can you tell us what those were again, and then will you repeat the first one for us?
Sure. Mindfulness versus mindlessness. So it's being present in the moment and being aware, and it's aware of why you're choosing the food, aware of what that food's going to give you in the moment, and if it's looking to, serve an emotional need, and instead of just mindlessly grabbing a handful of M&Ms, which is what I've been doing during this stressful time. Distress tolerance is acceptance of solutions and not relying on our maladaptive coping skills that we're used to. In my case, grabbing the handful of M&Ms. So we're finding different coping solutions. So like what Robin did with having the massage chair instead of the glass of wine, she's finding a different solution. She's finding a different coping skill that's more adaptive. The other one is emotional regulation, which is identifying your feelings about events and then either trying to reframe, honor them, but not use the maladaptive coping skill. And interpersonal effectiveness is dealing with relationships, and that's relationships with, so like if you get angry and then you turn to a bag of chips, recognizing why am I getting angry? What can I do in the moment to maybe not get so angry, as well as recognizing our relationship with our environment.
Thank you so much. That was,
okay.
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Such a great question. Thank you, Jeannie.
Hey, I have a question from Facebook on the live. Debbie wanted to know, what is the best thing we should do to protect our mental health right now?
Our mental health? I'll let you take that one.
We're in a really, really challenging time. So what I am encouraging all of my clients to do, coaching or therapy clients, is to look for the joy and to really, really recognize your gratitude, but also recognize what you can control versus what you can't control. So you cannot control what's going on with the CDC or what the hospitals are looking like or any of that. But what you can control is washing your hands, getting fresh air, staying connected to your loved ones, even if it's via, FaceTime instead of in person, and really, really holding on to what makes you grateful. You can control those things and look to what's bringing you joy. As much, when it's the yin and yang of the world right now, as much as there is a lot of darkness and a lot of heaviness, there's a lot of beauty that's coming from this, and really looking at what we personally are being impacted positively in a positive way is the best thing that you can do for your mental health right now. I hope that helps.
For sure. And I'll just address too, just one other topic. There's 2 different ways that the individual takes in and receives energy. If you are an extrovert, your desire to be with people and to have that direct face-to-face human connection is intense. That is how you're hardwired. Right now in the state of shelter in place, this is like an introvert's dream, right? We get to just we get to reflect and re-energize and have a space of quiet. But for an extrovert, this actually can create some additional emotional stress because you're not getting what you need to fill your cup. So get kind of creative and use Zoom and reach out. Annette had a great idea last night. They actually were playing family games over Zoom, right? So they were connecting families and finding different ways to get connected in a meaningful way that actually can fill the extrovert's cup. while the introverts right now are actually quite happy, just sort of settling in and recharging and sort of loving the quiet a little bit, right? So just know that everybody's going to feel this global pandemic differently. So I hope that helps too.
And I do want to say one more thing about control, you guys, is we also can control what we put in our bodies, which also helps our immune system, which helps our mental health with knowing where we're at as far as the virus itself is concerned. So staying true to your healthy habits, while recognizing during a time like this, it's harder to stay true to the healthy habits. So just give yourself a break, give yourself some grace if you're not, but do your best to stay tied to your healthy habit. Okay.
Yeah, totally. Hormones too, you guys. If you're stressed out, your stress is increasing, then your cortisol is increasing. If your cortisol is increasing, your insulin pump is turning on. If all those are going on, your serotonin is down and your leptin is blocked, right? Think of it in terms of how do I create an environment within my body that allows all of those hormones to actually process and work for us, not against us in the time of stress. Yeah. Anything else, Lindsay? No. Okay. Well, it's 8:36. I don't want to. Hi, Katie. It's good to see you. I don't want to take any more of your time. It was great to be on with you this morning. I hope it was helpful, and I really appreciate the opportunity.